9, 10, and then also a slide of rat and sizer that you can look at. So let's take a look at some of those now. And bear in mind, look at more than one slide example of each one and see if we can find the different stages of the ameloblast life cycle. And also while you're at it, you can review the structures of the enamel organ. So here, let's go down in navigation, see what else we can find on this slide. Okay, we have a little bit of a tear up here, but as we look at this, when we come down to the cervical loop, if we start there and go up towards the cusp, we can find at least 3 of the stages of the ameloblast life cycle in these coronal sections of pig embryo. So as we go down or go up in magnification, there's the cervical loop. We can see that there is indeed a basement membrane between the cells of the inner enamel epithelium and the dental papilla. And so right in here, we don't see any sort of change in the cells of the dental papilla. So these ameloblasts would still be in the morphogenic stage. Now, even though they look a little bit columnar, this is still morphogenic stage, at least for our purposes. You can see a little bit of a cell-free zone. And as we come up, well, you can see the stratum intermedium there, stellate reticulum. And coming up, we begin to see some changes in the cells of the dental papilla, and lo and behold, right in here, they're differentiating into odontoblasts. So right in here, we would have the organizing stage. We do not yet have any sort of synthesis, or at least deposition, of the enamel proteins. And as we come up, we see some dentin, some pre-dentin. Let me open up the iris diaphragm here a little bit. And then we begin to see some enamel being laid down. And so right in here, we know that we are in the synthetic or the formative stage, because right there are Tomes processes. So this has to be synthetic or formative stage. And as we come up a bit, you can actually see within that enamel that's being laid down, those little pits in which Tomes process was in before we had any shrinkage of the tissue due to the processing. Now, as we look at this as well, we can see that that outer enamel epithelium is coming up. Let's back off here a little bit. And we have just the initial formation of that reduced enamel epithelium. And then here on the other side, even at this magnification, you can see Tomes processes. So right in there. And you see that the nuclei are on the proximal side of the cell, the proximal compartment, and Tomes process would be on the distal side or the distal compartment. Let's take a look at another slide here. Not quite as far along, but again we have morphogenic stage. Then as we come up, we see recruitment, differentiation of the odontoblasts, so we would have organizing stage in here. And then we come up, we see enamel, and then we have the synthetic stage, and again you can see Tomes processes right there. So look at those two slides. That would be slide 9. If we go to slide 10, things are going to be a little bit further along. And right here, well, we can pick out cervical loop right there. So we have morphogenic stage. Then you can see those cells are getting taller. We have some odontoblasts coming along, so we have the organizing stage. And we begin to find a little bit of enamel being formed, and we can see Tomes processes. So we have the synthetic stage. Now, from time to time, the enamel here is going to be a little bit fractured, so we probably did not have quite as much in the way of demineralization of this tooth as we would like to have seen. But even with this, you can begin to see the enamel rods being laid down. Even though this is not entirely mineralized, you can begin to see the pattern of those enamel rods as we see right in here. And those structures we will be doing in lab after the lab practical. Now there is another slide that is labeled, what does it say here? This comes from the mouse, yeah. Tooth, newborn mouse. This is a plastic section. And the preservation on some of these is rather good. And very little in the way of shrinkage. We see odontoblasts there, we see some dentin, and right here we see the ameloblasts. And in fact, you can see Tomes processes going into the enamel. So not much in the way of shrinkage, and some very nice preservation there. But otherwise, we see all the same structures. See the dental papilla here. Here's Hertwig's epithelial root sheath, and there's the future apical foramen. And we've got odontoblasts, we have some dentin, and then we've got the enamel being laid down. Now for the other stages of the ameloblast life cycle, we need to go to the slide of the rat incisor. If you don't have this in your slide box, I have more up here. You pick out a couple and put them into your slide box. Now there is enamel only on one side of the tooth. That would be on the buccal side. So as we orient ourselves, we need to find where that enamel is being laid down, and you're going to have a very short length in which you'd have morphogenic and organizing that will come right into synthetic or formative right here. And so there are the ameloblasts, staining not quite so good on this one. But you can see those little pits that once were occupied by Tomes processes. Well, that we've seen in those other slides. So as we follow that enamel down, you can see that that enamel is changing in color. We can see the enamel rods. But you see this enamel is beginning to disappear. And if we go to that surface, we no longer see those pits. This enamel is becoming more and more mineralized. It does not stain as well because the organic material is being withdrawn. So these ameloblasts are in the maturation stage. And as we follow these, pretty soon, that enamel mostly disappears. So we'll follow this down. You still have maturation of that enamel. You can see those ameloblasts, and we'll keep on going down. You can see they're starting to get shorter and shorter and shorter, so that about the time we get down here, those ameloblasts are in the protective stage. They are attached to the surface of the enamel, which is now gone in this slide because it's been demineralized. So they are attached by hemidesmosomes on that distal surface, and those hemidesmosomes attach to a basal lamina-like structure, which is on the surface of the enamel. And as we follow this down, they're going to get shorter and shorter, and pretty soon this is going to become the attached junctional epithelium, which we'll be talking about when we do the enamel next time, and also when we get to eruption and shedding. Okay, so those are the slides for today. And as you look at this rat incisor, remember we have, go back over here, we have enamel on this side, there's dentin, there's predentin, and as we come to the other side, all we have is dentin, no enamel. And you can follow that all the way down. And you can see where that animal has sharpened that to a very sharp point. You don't see the enamel that was out here, but you just see that dentin. And normally in rodents, that enamel is a kind of a yellowish or an orange color. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started.